Hello and welcome to Sideways. I usually make a few notes to remind me of what we've covered in each of our programmes. It's such an eclectic mix, and I did do that again this week, but I'm feeling a bit snoozy. I'm trying to crate train the puppy, and so I left my notes on my desk. So I'm out with the dog now, and so this is my best recollection of what went on. Really, the best thing to do is just listen to it, and then you'll know. But as far as I can recall, this week we were talking about rejection, why it hurts so much, and why it's never a good idea to hang on when it's time to let go. We also discuss leather trousers, Martin's traumatic memory of being dropped to the bench for a cup final, but how he used his pain, even at his tender age, to move forwards. And he also finds gratitude in cool air blown into his face. Dealing with rejection.
All right.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thanks. Yeah, how's Nellie, the little puppy?
Yeah, she's mental.
Is she?
Yeah.
Is she keeping you fully occupied?
Yeah, she is 24/7.
Is she?
I'm thinking
excellent stuff.
Renaming her 24/7.
It's a nice name. You can call that out in the street, can't you, Joe?
Yeah, it's not snappy, is it, really?
Not really, no. Now, calling a dog by sort of a series of numbers, it lacks a little bit of something, doesn't it?
Yeah, didn't one of those billionaires, Musk or Bezos or someone, call their child some ridiculous collection of numbers and letters, didn't they?
Did they? I don't know about that, but
I think so. If he and whoever it was, if he hadn't already proved conclusively what a wanker he was, that was just the cherry on the top of the cake. Anyway, never mind.
For the poor child.
Never mind about that. I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever had any leather trousers?
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
Oh dear, I didn't think you would have done, but I saw someone in some leather trousers the other day, and I thought, oh dear, leather trousers, you can't carry a leather trouser off, can you? And I thought, I'll ask Martin. I don't suppose he did, but that surprised me in a really quite wonderful way, the thought of you in some leather trousers.
Well, don't you remember? I used to wear them on stage.
Oh, God, I do remember, yeah.
That's the only pair I've ever had.
Did you only wear them on stage?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not quite so funny then.
No.
Yeah, I do remember.
No,
yeah.
I wouldn't walk around the streets with a pair of leather strides on. I look a right knob, especially at my age.
Have you still got them?
I've still got some of my old stage gear, yeah, from somewhere. Yeah.
You probably still have got your leather trousers then?
Yeah, probably somewhere. Yeah, I can't imagine I was like stick thin when I put those on. I probably wouldn't get them over one leg now.
That's a shame, because the idea of you going down to Aldi in them later on is quite excellent.
I spent they're all cracked and broken now. You know, like you have to treat leather with a bit of respect, don't you? Really.
Have you also got that big kind of leopard skin shawl thing that you used to wear?
No, I haven't got that anymore. No, that was that was my mum's old bedspread, or mum and dad's old bedspread thing. That I cut a hole in it, put my head through it, put a belt around the middle, and that was stage worthy, mate.
I don't know what possessed us to get into that sort of clobber to perform. Do you? Because I mean, I've had some pretty ropey fashion disasters performance-wise.
Yeah, well, we're young and full of hope. Life soon smashes that out of you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, being young and full of hope doesn't excuse the yellow leggings that I used to wear in a band.
No, there's never an excuse for that. But it's just trying to be a little bit different, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that was the motivation.
Show our individuality.
Exactly. Yeah. We didn't quite manage it because lots of people wore leather trousers on stage, but there we go.
Yeah. Anyway, there we are.
Anyway,
just glad we cleared that up.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I don't know where these questions suddenly pop into your head for, but it's not going to throw me off stride today because I want to deal with. My notes were headed up dealing with rejection.
Okay.
Now, the idea for this week's episode it comes up in group from time to time, but certainly over the last couple of weeks, there's someone in group was sharing that his destructive relationship with alcohol and the constant lapsing and over little periods of sobriety and this constant cycle it got to the point where finally his family had enough. They'd started to back away, and his support bubble, if you like, had started to collapse a little bit, and he felt this real sense of rejection, even though he could see why. It still hurts, and I think it's something we've all had to deal with in their lives, isn't it? At some point, we've all had rejections. I mean, it's not limited to people with addiction problems, not by any means. I think we've all. I mean, can you remember times when you've been rejected in the past? We all can, can't we?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that. I was trying to think of that this morning, and I'm sure there are multiple times, but nothing. The only thing was nothing kind of sprung to mind that would be interesting or amusing enough to share on the podcast.
Well, before we start, then I'll let you think about that, perhaps. But
yeah, hang on, I'll just make a note. Rejections, yeah.
Yeah. Before we start,
well, I can actually just before you start with before we start.
No,
I can think of one time when I asked a girl out, and I mean I was punching really a little bit, and she said yes, and I was really really surprised and delighted. That must have been on I don't know, maybe a Monday night, and by Wednesday night she changed her mind. So, that was quite hard. And I mean that was many years ago now, so that obviously hurt because, I remember it vividly, and when I think about it, it's still somewhat painful.
Yeah, well, I suppose between Monday and Wednesday she'd sobered up and seen the horror of the potential ahead. I can understand that.
Oh, I think she missed out big time.
Anyway, before we start then.
Right,
Before you start.
Yeah.
You got some feedback this week, didn't you? After dripping on last week, you didn't get any feedback. You actually got some this week.
I did get some feedback. It was nice. Yeah, I was very grateful to your daughter for giving me some feedback.
Yeah, it's very thoughtful of her. Well, I didn't prompt her to do that. Obviously, she just did that off her own bat, and I thought, it was very good.
It was very thoughtful of her, and it was nice to see that she'd taken a nugget of my wisdom and said she was going to take it forward.
Yes, but you also made her swear on the text, which I wasn't happy with.
Well, sometimes I think sometimes swearing's acceptable, just to as a way of accentuation.
Well, yeah. Well, I think you should take a little bit more responsibility before you use such language, especially when my daughters are going to be listening. But
it's funny, it's funny to think about swearing. Quite often, people will sit in my clinic room and they'll swear when they're telling me something, which is perfectly understandable, isn't it? People will swear when they're telling me about things that have happened to them or things that people have done.
Yeah. And
almost everybody then apologises for swearing. It's funny, isn't it? There's a kind of social convention about swearing.
Yeah. Well, you should come to some of our groups, mate. There's no apologies ever proffered. Although we do have a boundary on swearing, so we do pull people up. Because some people use it in every other word, don't they? Or they cram as many swear words as they can into one sentence, and it's gratuitous.
Do you have a swearing hierarchy? I mean, there must be words that you won't allow, aren't there?
Oh, yeah, there are the obvious ones, but we just generally pull people up if they're a little bit sweary because some people don't like it. There's another bit on the before you start category here. I've got a couple of bits actually. Did you see the programme on BBC Two called Reclaiming Amy?
No, I didn't, but I did see it was on, and then I thought about watching it and thought that we should probably watch it, and then we'd probably get an episode out of it, but I haven't watched it, no.
No, I mean, it was marking the 10th anniversary of Amy Winehouse's death. And to a certain extent, it was a rebuttal from her family, really, and her friends of some of the claims that were made in the documentary film Amy from 2015. I don't know whether you ever saw that, the documentary film, which is quite horrifying, really.
Very popular.
Yeah, probably was. But to this particular program, it was interesting, and it obviously went through stages of her life and showed how deadly alcoholism can be. Obviously, she died at 27. But I think the point that I picked up on there, that she'd yo-yoed from binge drinking to periods of sobriety, which can be so dangerous. It really can, for a number of reasons. But certainly people sometimes, when they binge and then give up for a few days or a little while, think, I can't be an alcoholic because I'm not drinking every day. So that's dangerous. It does immense damage to the body. And, you know, the effect of that stopping and starting, it just traumatises their body the whole time. And poor Amy, on top of her anorexia, which was a constant problem for her, her body just simply gave up. So it was a real sad story to outstanding talent. So it's a great watch, but very sad. So another thing that was on, which I only watched last night on Catch Up. It was on ITV on their Tonight programme, and it was entitled "Are We Drinking Too Much?" But basically, it was all about the disconnection, and we talked in the past, haven't we, about the disconnection or connection being the opposite of alcoholism or addiction. Yeah. Without connection, things are extremely difficult. So that came up. But there's also a phrase I quite liked that one of the girls used in there, and she said that alcohol is the only drug that we have to justify not taking, which I thought was quite when you think about it. I thought, I've not really heard that in that sort of fashion before, but we do justify. I still do it from time to time. People say, "Well, you're not having a drink then? What's the matter with you?" People haven't seen for a long time or don't know my situation. So it's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd never thought of it like that, but that's absolutely right.
Anyway, we're crack on, shall we, with Rejection?
Yeah, go on. Why not?
Yeah,
just before you start with that, just one final thought, because I won't be able to shoehorn this in anywhere else. I was reading in the news this morning about how there's a plan to try and encourage young people to have the COVID vaccine by offering them cheap takeaways and free taxi rides. And I kind of wondered rhetorically what you thought about that, but it struck me that, if you start behaving like that, giving people free takeaways and free taxi rides, then you might solve the COVID problem in young people, but you'll create a problem of heart disease because none of them are getting enough exercise and they're all stuffing their faces with pizza and burgers.
I can't. I mean, I was absolutely aghast when I saw on the news that in America they're offering $100 to people, to the youngsters, to go and have the vaccine done. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it just seems strange. You've got to force people down that road, or persuade them. Like a little carrot for a donkey, isn't it? Trying to usher them towards the right way of thinking, rather than the education, the science behind how the vaccine works. It just seems crazy. No, and I can't see that's right. Can you? I mean, I can't see how that it should be. It should be a straightforward decision.
It should, and as things stand, without those incentives, they are rejecting the COVID vaccine.
Good work, mate. Well, you've put a nice little segue in there, which was unusual for you.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd have a go this week. I was feeling a bit left out.
Yeah, well, it's good, and it does lead me on, because we've already discussed about you being blown out by a young lady. And the
48 hours after saying yes.
Yeah, it's a shocker. I thought we talked about the previous episode, didn't we, about me being blown out by Sophie
on the train station,
on the platform of Maidstone East when I was about 17. That sort of stayed with me. I'll still bring it up now. It did stay with me, but I remember there's another rejection that still hurts now, and this is from when I was playing for Crusaders, the football team, the under-12s.
Right.
We got to the cup final. I'd played in all the previous rounds, got to the cup final, and the manager left me out the team. And he put his son in instead of me. All right, it was a right donkey. And the rejection I felt on that occasion was enormous. It was awful, and that seriously pissed me off, as you can imagine. And it still sits with me. I didn't talk about it to anyone after. I just sulked for ages, and I just went off and joined another team. I thought, I'm not having that. It's just outrageous behaviour. Well, and it was seriously bad. And he didn't even put me on. He put me on the subs bench, and he didn't even put me on.
Did you get a medal? Did you win?
I got runners-up medal. We'd lost anyway. I was almost pleased we lost. I was getting myself all wound up like that. I was only 11, so I wasn't prepared for that.
No.
And a lot of rejection and problems we have with rejection can be rooted in our childhood, as you will probably back up.
I will, but the thing about that little story is that first of all, your response, setting aside the fact that you were 11 years old, your first response was one of passive aggression, wasn't it? Because you sulked. But here's the thing: even at 11, you showed the progressive thought sufficient to move yourself forward by saying, well, actually, I'm going to use this anger now. I'm going to propel myself forward and go and join another team. So actually you acted in the best way you possibly could by using your frustration and going and joining. Who did you go and join? MPE or something?
South Celtic.
South Celtic. Oh yeah, that's right. You liked the shirts, didn't you?
I did like the Celtic shirts, and it was and it was just lovely going back and beating the old team when we played them next. That was just fantastic. But so revenge was sort of sweet in that. Well, not even revenge, but it was. I felt the score had been settled to a certain extent, so I sort of got over it. But but it sort of set me up. I mean, other rejections I had later on in life didn't seem to be as bad as that. It was weird how deeply it impacted me. I remember. I mean, do you remember we went into those Battle of the Bands? Remember those?
God, yeah.
The rejection from those afterwards, you didn't get through. And you think, oh my God. But we just moved on quite quickly from that. I think I'd matured by that time, and I dealt with rejection in a completely different way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, you're illustrating now that rejection is a very broad canvas.
It is. But fear of rejection, again, that can stem from childhood. I mean, you find out people that we get people come to groups that have perhaps lost their parents when they were young, and they almost felt rejected at that point because the parents had almost rejected them, left them to go. Especially if we've had we had a yeah, they have, and especially I know we talked about it before, where Joey Essex on that program his mum committed suicide, and the sense of rejection then was enormous. You could see it, and it's those sort of things that are going to stay with you for a long, long time, and it shapes the way you think about things. And I think unless you get some sort of therapeutic help, there can be a lot of negativity involved in harbouring those feelings and emotions around rejection. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. I often have similar kind of conversations with people in therapy about how, people who struggle with abandonment, and just that very point that if they suffered an early bereavement, emotionally, that is the same as being left. You're being left. Now, that person who died, whether it's your mother or your father or, a sibling or whatever, obviously they didn't intend to leave you. They didn't walk out on you, but they have left you at a time when, you needed them to be there.
It is. I mean, it's rejection. I think it does continue to dog us through our lives. But when we suffer from rejection, how best should we deal with it? We touched on it early on about I just moved to another team that dealt with that. But is there any sort of plan you go through with people, or is there any sort of advice? I've got a few bits that I've picked up from the research, but just before I go on to that, there's an interesting quote I found which that goes like this: the desire for acceptance, which is the opposite of rejection, is a driving force that keeps many people from being an authentic human being. They are so driven by the need for acceptance of others that they lose their own identity in the process. It might be a slight deviation away from rejection, but they're looking at the opposite of that, of trying to be accepted, because that's an important factor as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it is a deviation away from rejection, because I think we might have spoken about this before, but the Native Americans have this way of thinking about the human spirit, and they say that when we're born, we're our true selves, and then almost immediately we start to kind of move away from our true selves so that we make sure that we're keeping the people around us happy. Because if we can keep the people around us happy, we're more likely to be safe, i.e. avoid rejection. And then what we find is much later in life, we realize that we've traveled some significant distance away from who we are in order to keep ourselves safe. But the person that we've actually rejected is ourselves. And then we can begin that kind of painstaking work of retracing our steps and finding ourselves again, which, for some people, they never do. And for a lot of people, that's when they go into therapy. They realize they either don't know who they are, or they've got some sense of who they are, but they feel they can't be that person. So when we think about rejection, I think it's also important for us not just to think about the way that we experience the rejection of other people, but also the devastating impact of rejecting ourselves.
Yeah, I can imagine. Just thinking that through. Certainly, when you're in active addiction, you've rejected yourself almost totally, and you've moved so far away from the core person that you were born as, and reflected in your early years. That it is a long way back, and the alcohol and drugs are almost a barrier to getting back towards that centre point. I'd imagine you don't ever get back to totally to that centre point, but the journey is going to be quite an interesting one, isn't it?
No, you can't. Obviously, you can never go back to a previous incarnation of yourself. But I think the point there is about becoming so dislocated from yourself that life becomes full of anxiety and stress. And as you say, in active addiction, that is effectively what you're doing. I mean, addicts reject everybody, don't they? Apart from their drug of choice.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it is a total rejection of the world,
exactly.
Really, when it gets to that end.
Yeah.
But when I looked at the research I was looking through about, when we suffer rejection, how best to deal with it, several points I wanted to go through with you. The first one was the only way you'll ever get over rejection is by accepting it, which I think we sort of touched on about, changing football teams. But to be honest with yourself about how you feel, and acknowledge these feelings and make sure you handle them correctly.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that's absolutely spot on. You think about it in terms of a relationship, a kind of romantic relationship. The very worst thing that you can do in that situation is not accept it, because by not accepting it and displaying the emotions that are attendant to not accepting it, anger, aggression, resentment, bitterness, neediness, desperation, all you do is make the rejection worse. You make that gap between yourself and the other person bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, yes, although sometimes it's extremely difficult to accept it, there really isn't another way. And
no.
And the reality is you're gonna continue suffering until you accept it.
I agree. The second point I was going to go on to is don't be self-critical. It's by all means review what's happened and consider what you should do differently in the future. But there's absolutely no good reason to be sort of punitive and self-critical while doing so. That's not really going to help, is it, if you beat yourself up at that point?
No. The only kind of slight modification I'd make to that would be I'd say, yes, never any benefit in being punitive. But sometimes it might be necessary for you to be self-critical. So, for example, just going back to the situation you were describing with someone in group, if his family are getting fed up with him and pushing him away, then actually there is some necessity for some self-criticism there, isn't there? Which is well, I've kind of brought this on myself. Now, I haven't intended to, and I am trying to get hold of my addiction and sort it out. But there is a point at which I have to kind of take responsibility for the part I've played in this rejection. And I think, you can see that in lots of different situations, whether it be a relationship, a family relationship or a friendship or whatever. If you have done something or behaved in a way that has in some way pushed that person away, part of you getting over it and accepting it is also accepting your part in it.
Okay, we've cleared that point up then.
I mean, obviously that girl who rejected me after 48 hours, that was entirely her fault. I was in no way to blame there, but...
Well, it leads nicely on to the third point here, which was don't take it personally. And another common mistake is to assume a rejection is personal, and often it's not. Whether it's romantic or professional or social rejection, it can be down to in inverted commas fit or circumstances. It's not just about the you. There may be other circumstances surrounding it, and I think we have to be aware of that.
Right. Again, I'd say yes. Don't automatically take it personally, but sometimes it might be personal.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what a good example of this is. I mean, obviously these days, online dating is the way that most people seem to meet one another. And people get incredibly upset at kind of texting back and forth between themselves and someone they've met on a dating site and then suddenly being ghosted. This person just, they've been messaging for 3 or 4 days and this person just stops responding. And people get really hurt by that, feel really rejected and really let down. And I always think, well, this person doesn't even know you. You know, you've never met. They know nothing about you really, apart from the kind of chit chat you've exchanged. And so that is an example of a rejection which feels massively personal, which by its definition must be impersonal because that person has no real knowledge of you. In the cold light of day, we can kind of reflect on it and ask ourselves, well, you know, can this be personal? Does this person actually have enough knowledge of me to stand that up?
But at that point, which leads me on to my next, the next point I wanted to discuss, your self-esteem can take a bit of a hit, can't it? Which obviously, when that girl rejected you, you probably started to beat yourself up a little bit, and your self-esteem started to get dragged through the mud. The next point here was that it's important to remind yourself of what you do have to offer. As opposed to sort of going through your own shortcomings. It's a little bit like the list my key worker had me draw up about, you know, when I first went into recovery, about my successes and attributes. And obviously there's way too many of those to go into here. It'll take forever. But it's a phenomenal list. But she used to call it, and it always sticks with me, this phrase, she called it an emotional first aid sheet. So you could always, once you got them listed down, and you looked at that, you can always, you were feeling a bit low, and your self-esteem's taking a bit of a hit. Have a little read through of that. And I thought that was quite good. And I did used to do that initially because it did used to remind me that even though I felt that I was the worst person in the world and no one was going to like me and I was never was going to be loved again, it just gave me a little bit of a boost.
Yeah. That's true. I think the thing with that, though, is that if your self-esteem is in a reasonable place or in reasonable shape as it is, that sort of falling back on reminding yourself why you're worthwhile is probably easier to use. If you're in a situation where actually your self-esteem is at a very low ebb and that you're a bit self-loathing and you don't think you're much good anyway, I think they're the situations where rejection massively floors us. It's like like it's a confirmation of everything we believed about ourselves. And so that kind of list is something sometimes I work with people on in therapy. You know, I'll say to someone, if I asked you to make a list of things that are, you know, not very valuable about you, would you be able to do it? Or things you don't like about yourself? And people can find that very, very easy to do. And if I then ask them to make a list of things they really value about themselves, they find that very, very tough. So with someone like that, when they're rejected, all it seems to be doing to them is fulfilling what they already knew. Yeah, I'm absolutely, I'm a shit and nobody cares about me. And there it is. So trying to pick yourself up from that is very, very tough. But certainly the kind of list of attributes that you have and things that are worthy about you is something we should all have. We should all have that in our back pocket to remind ourselves of why we're worth something when, you know, things go wrong. Anyway,
now you've shredded most of my points I've got on here and debunked them all.
No, I'm not debunking them. I hope you don't feel rejected. I'm just trying to add a little bit of something to them and
perspective,
another angle, perhaps.
Yeah. I know what you're trying to do. Anyway, you also, the next point was there's a couple more little points. It's completely normal and it happens to everyone. Whether that makes us feel any better at the time or not, it probably doesn't.
I think that one, I'm not even going to add to that one because I think that one is absolutely right. You know, when you feel rejected, it feels like it's the worst feeling in the world and you feel very, very low and you feel as if you're the only person that's ever felt like that. But, you know, as you're saying, it's not the case. It's quite common. One of the things that's quite interesting about emotional pain, and, you know, everybody listening to this can test this out. If you remember times in your life where you've been physically injured, if you think back to that now, you can't really recall that physical pain. You know it was painful because you can remember having a cast on your leg or whatever it was, but you probably can't remember what it felt like. If you think about something that caused you emotional pain, you'll be able to bring that back. And if you think about it long enough, you'll start to get the attendant feelings. You might feel angry, you might feel sad, you might feel resentful, you might feel bitter. So it's a kind of illustration that it's much easier for us to recall emotional pain. And that's one of the reasons why rejection hurts so much, because when we're rejected, we then start to think of all the other times we've been rejected. And it's very, very easy for us to remember those times and create a kind of cumulative impact. So I agree with that one. I'm not going to try and upgrade it for you.
Well, I'm very thankful.
You should be.
Anyway, the last point up on here was it's obviously particularly looking at when a personal relationship breaks down is don't try to change their mind. That seems to be the cause of a lot of issues that come up when they've had when a breakdown relationship can turn quite nasty, and someone is trying to get back at them or trying to get them to change their mind, pleading with them to take them back into their lives. It's never really going to work, is it?
No, it's a kind of strange phenomenon, this, because at one time or another, I suspect everybody's done it, or even if they haven't done it, they felt like doing it, but it is almost universally, exclusively unsuccessful. When someone tells you they don't want to be in a relationship with you anymore, you're much better just accepting it, as I was saying earlier, because ironically saying, okay, fine. So if it's a partner that rejects you and you say, okay, if that's what you want, then I'll go, then you're likely to be much more attractive to that person than if you say, please don't, I don't want you to go, I can't live without you. I mean, nobody wants to be with anyone like that. Nobody wants to be with someone that they don't perceive as being strong enough to stand on their own 2 feet. Obviously, it's not guaranteed, but in the long term, if you really do value that relationship, you're much better off just accepting it in the moment, because that is your best chance of at some point getting that relationship back. Because if you don't accept it and you plead and you get needy and pathetic, then that's game over.
Yeah. So looking back at it, when the train was drawing out of Maidstone East and Sophie was going away, when I was running along the platform doing like a heart shape like Gareth Bale does when he scores a goal, that was a little bit too needy at that point, wasn't it?
Well, let's just. Did she come back to you?
No.
Well, there you go. That's all you need to know, isn't it?
That didn't actually happen, but I wanted to embellish the story a little bit there. But I think it's just trying to get people to change their minds, especially if they're pulling away in the train. You're not going to be able to do it, are you? Yeah,
forget it. I'll tell you, the only thing that would have embellished that picture of you running along making a Gareth Bale heart shape would have been if you'd been wearing your leather trousers at the time.
and I've fallen off the end of the platform. Yeah, that'd been good, wouldn't it? Yeah, proper TikTok moment.
Yeah, I think it's important. When you think about rejection, it's important to recognise we probably all humiliated ourselves, haven't we? We've probably all done things that we've done things that feel embarrassing when we've been rejected. I think it's quite important just to. That's the area where I think it's important to let yourself off the hook. It hurts, bloody hurts being rejected, and the same areas are activated through emotional pain as they are through physical pain. So it isn't surprising that we find it a big struggle. So I think it is important to not be too hard on yourself when you're feeling extremely low after rejection, but to recognise that the only person that's going to pick you up is you.
When you're dealing with, after you've had those experiences of rejection, I know I found myself edging towards this particular scenario is when, if a future relationship was starting, I'd almost, if I saw any particular signs that things were going to go wrong, I sort of got the rejection in first. But that didn't make me feel any better. But it was almost, in my mind, I was thinking, well, I'm going to, cut this off at the pass because it's going to save me pain later on down the line. But it never actually did.
No, and that is a classic. That's the classic move of someone who's struggling for self-worth. Because when you find yourself in a relationship where someone is properly loving you, you can't accept it because you don't really believe you're truly lovable. You're waiting for something to go wrong. And you end up in this situation where, as you say, you destroy it before it gets to destroy you. But the shame of that is that it probably wouldn't have destroyed you.
No. And it's, you look back on it and think of some of the mistakes you've made, but that is it is part of the learning curve, I suppose. And then I deal with any sort of rejection now in a much different way than I did when I was 11.
Well, I mean, you're too old now to be rejected, aren't you?
Well, to be honest, yeah. I want to pick your number. You've got a list of 7. If you still got your 17-point list in front of you.
Well, I've got 16 now, haven't I? Because you picked 17 last week.
You did. Well, I want to pick number 7 this week.
Okay,
that's all right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Have you not got them numbered?
No, of course I haven't got them numbered.
Well, number them so you can go straight to it when I ask you.
You know I'm not going to number them.
Not even the bullet points.
No. Okay, so number 7 on my gratitude list, I just have to wipe her off now, is Jane Seabury, who's a Canadian musician, singer, songwriter. And so the reason I've got her on my gratitude list is because I recognised a few years ago, well, I love her music, so, that would be enough probably on its own. But I recognised a few years ago that for some reason she's kind of cropped up at all sorts of moments in my life that have been of most significance. So I can remember listening to a particular album of hers a lot when I got married, when my children were born. I can remember I was due to go and see her play the day that my father died. I don't know. I always kind of return. Maybe you've got an artist like this, but I always find myself returning to her music whenever I'm feeling fragile emotionally. For some reason, there's always something that I get from her music, whatever kind of mood I'm in, whether it's kind of joy or whether I'm feeling kind of dark and despairing. For some reason, I'm always drawn to her. So that's what I'm grateful for this week.
All right, okay. On my gratitude list this week, quite a simple one, really. It's my desktop fan.
Quite frankly, it surprises me you've got any fans at all.
Well, this is electric. This is a USB one that just keeps me cool.
That makes sense.
In these humid days, yeah. It is. Well, it was a present given to me. In fact, I think it was Lizzie, my youngest daughter, gave me this present at one time, and I use it all the time now. And I think, how did I get by without it? It's fantastic. I've actually turned it off now because although you can't hear it whirring away, it will be on later on today. So I use it an awful lot. So I'm grateful for that.
Very good. Do you not just open the window and get a bit of fresh air in?
Yeah, well, recently there's been very little movement in the air, apart from yesterday or a couple of days ago when it was incredibly windy.
All right, Michael Fish.
Today it's very still out there, so a fan is necessary.
Is there an occluded front?
I'm not really aware. I was looking up, and the stratus nimbus clouds are about, so they're probably not. Anyway, yes.
Yeah, go on.
Anyway, Spotify list. So rejection. That's what I put.
Oh, blimey! I can't even think of any with rejection.
No, it's
apart from I can think of the Cockney Rejects.
That's it. Well, that was the first thing that came up. Really, is the Cockney Rejects. I mean, I could have put something on by them. One of the bands I used to really like during the late 70s. All West Ham fans,
aren't they?
Yeah. Used to have the ICF doing their bouncing at gigs, didn't they?
Did they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. The ICF were there to keep order. Can you imagine that?
Not really.
But there's one, Rejection by AC/DC, which I quite like. But I didn't put that on the list. And I could have had Unhandled Promise Rejection by Nervous Test Pilot, which I quite. The Nervous Test Pilot is just a single bloke. Paul Taylor is like a music producer from the UK. So I could have had him, but it wasn't a very good track. I didn't like that one. But my choice for this week, which again, I really liked the track, but I liked the name especially because it's by a group called Post Punk Podge and the Techno Hippies. They're from Limerick in Ireland, and they do a track called Rejection Again. So I like that, and that's going on my list.
Yeah, there's a certain flavour, isn't there, to the Spotify playlist?
What's the flavour?
Well, it's not an eclectic mix, is it? Apart from the Tibetan singing bowls, most of it I would think is probably of a piece, isn't it?
Not really. No, we've had people like Adam Lambert in there, haven't we? Doing
I suppose so.
And I was looking back through this the other day. It is quite a variation of genres of music on there. So it's not all just sort of stuff.
So let me ask you this then: if I were to put on that playlist,
Yeah.
to play through it, what sort of, because people often use playlists when they're doing different things, doing their work,
Yes.
or out running, or whatever.
Yeah.
What sort of activity do you think would most suit a listen to the entirety of the Sideways podcast playlist?
Oh, I would say it's because it's quite a mixture. I would say probably whilst you're out on a walk, not running, but walking.
So sometimes you'd probably, with some tracks, you might walk a bit faster. Other times,
you would.
Other times you might sit on a bench or lie on the grass looking up at the sky.
Exactly, just reflecting. Yeah, when the old Tibetan singing bowls come on, you just want to get in touch with nature at that point. Yeah. Then when Skindred come along, you want to put a bit of a pace on, when you're marching up the road. So, yeah, it will cover the whole your whole walk.
I might try that then. What I might do is I might put it on, go out for a walk, and then report back.
Okay, yeah. See how your mood changed. Well, that's an episode on its own, really. We ought to expand on that.
I'll ask Daisy how she feels about trying that out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, she might reject it.
She might. I doubt it. She's usually up for a walk.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to round up the whole episode then by putting Rejection in right at the very last, but you've spoiled that. Yeah,
I know what you were doing. It just wasn't very good.
Yeah.
By far the best way of ending these episodes is for me to ask you what you're having for dinner today.
Oh, I haven't sorted that out yet.
Oh, so do you know what sort of seasonings you'll be having on it?
No, I'm not going to get involved in all that anymore because you're trying to make me out as this sort of this very poor cook that has no imagination. And to be honest, I'm upset by it. I'm rejecting that anything about talking about what I'm having for dinner anymore ever.
All right then. Okay. Well, I'll go and put my washing out then.
Okay.
All right, mate.
All right. Well, I'll speak to you later.
I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work or sort through the extensive archive of past episodes, just visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Sideways Podcast, and you can email us if you have a question or if there's something you'd like us to cover. But most of all, we want to tell you how grateful we are that you come and listen, and we ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.